Welcome to the Lorehounds. This is our Oscar wrap-up. I'm your host, David.
And I'm Elysia, self-crowned 2024 Queen of Oscar predictions.
Did you win?
I don't know if it's been tallied up yet, but I have to say, we'll get into it, but this was a particularly predictable year.
Oh, okay. Very easy.
I think a lot of people did
right?
well. Yeah.
Very good. If you missed it, go back and check out our 3-part Oscar prep series to hear all of our thoughts going into the Oscars ceremony, plus the passion picks and insights of a bunch of members of the Lorehounds community and beyond. Special thanks to Jean last week for filling in. I'm doing well. Thanks, everybody. And it's good to be back.
And today we're looking back on the ceremony, which took place last night as we're recording, and what were our favorite moments and biggest surprises.
And then, now that we've both watched all 10 Best Picture nominees, we'll be counting down our own rankings of these films before taking a quick look at some of the movies you might want to keep your eyes on ahead of next year's Oscars death race.
We also want to hear your thoughts. What did you think of this year's ceremony and winners? And what films are you already eyeing for next year's nominations? Please email us all your feedback at lorehounds@thelorehounds.com, or even easier, head over to thelorehounds.com and use the contact form or the voicemail feature there. And we'd also love to hear your input on our lively Discord. Links in the show notes.
We got a voicemail today, too, for our feedback. Yeah. That was great. Can't wait to hear that. All right. For ad-free versions of this and all of our podcasts, check us out at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Also, we're using a new platform called Supercast, which is like Patreon, but it's better built for podcasters. Anyway, the links for both of those are in the show notes. And if you're deciding, if you're on the fence, go for the Supercast, unless you're really just comfortable with the Patreon, but either one is fine. All of your support goes to helping create and establish our community, keeping all the bits flowing and such.
And we'd also be forever grateful if you could help us get more ears tuned into our Oscar and other coverage. Please do pass this episode along to anyone else you know who loves Oscar talk, or just leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening. It really helps more people find us.
Well, Elysia, how's your sleep cycle? I think it's all messed up because you're in a far different time zone than the rest of us.
Well, the Oscars were at least 2 hours earlier for me this year. They normally start at 2 a.m. for me, and this year they started at midnight because you guys changed the clocks and because they started an hour
right,
earlier.
Exactly. We had that double whammy. I will say, I'm not in the past, I think I'm going to be watching a lot more Oscars going in the future now that we've got this going, because I think this has been a lot of fun. But in the past, it was like hit or miss Oscars. And, when you would stay up and you'd just be holding on for that last Best Picture, reveal. And it's like 11:45, 11:30. And you're like, I just want to go to bed. Can you guys get through this, please? And I have to say, last night was great. I loved the earlier start time. Mm-hmm. It just had a nice pace and cruised right on through. It felt really good. What did you think about the last night's ceremony?
Overall, it was really, really strong ceremony. It wasn't an exciting ceremony in terms of the surprises because like I said, It was very predictable. There are 23 categories. I correctly predicted 21 of them. And the two that I didn't correctly predict, which were animated shorts, I really wanted 95 Senses to win. And the prediction was War is Over, but it just seemed like such a cynical prediction because it has the name Sean Lennon on it, but nobody thinks it's that good in terms of writing.
Okay.
And then original screenplay. Yeah, I just really wanted Past Lives to win, so I predicted it. But Anatomy was a strong contender always, and a strong win.
I thought the overall, like you said, there were no huge surprises, and there certainly were no physical confrontations on stage or any of the other kind of craziness like that. But I think I just really appreciated the fact that it cruised along. It had a lot of fun, upbeat moments. None of the jokes really bombed that badly, and they just got through the ceremonies and they got through the work that they needed to do. So I was pretty pleased with the overall event. I think I really like the fact that Divine Joy's joke about her publicist, like everybody started picking up on that, and that became like this running gag through the whole evening. That was really sweet. And so it felt like it wasn't just a cookie cutter event, but there was a little bit of, and people are playing around and having fun with it and stuff. So yeah, and the stage looked beautiful last night. I really liked the way that they did all the visual production and everything. It Yeah, it was good. It just felt like a solid win for the Oscars and for the movie industry.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to say, so I talk to my mom always watching this still. And she told me today the 2 moments that she's watched 3 times each were Emma Stone's acceptance speech and I'm Just Ken.
Okay. Right. But that was like a shortened version of the song, right? That wasn't the full thing.
No,
that was
but
like
it was a lot of it though. But they
Okay.
got all the major, beats in the bridge and all that.
I just felt like, I wanted more of that because it is such a rising ballad. It's just such a great, fun, upbeat song in so many ways.
Well, it was also funny because I joked to Jean and, part 3 of this series, I was like, I hope Simu Liu shows up dancing. And he was there. And not only him, Ncuti Gatwa was there. And also Kingsley Ben-Adir was there. Like
that was very cool.
Slash was there.
Right. That was wild. That was really wild. Yeah. It just seemed, and then I don't know, the John Cena bit where he was naked on stage. I don't know, maybe what you thought about that, but the fact that he was naked, as I understand it, he was fully naked, and that he
probably
did that
with like a little string, but
some sort of modesty curtain there. But there was a picture that I posted in our Discord. We actually had a lot of fun last night because last minute we didn't advertise this, and I think we'll talk about this more when we get to towards the end of the podcast. We'll talk about our plans for next year. But we decided last minute, let's set up a little channel in the Discord, and folks who are watching live, we can chat real time. And I posted a screenshot from Twitter of somebody in the balcony who took a picture from the side of him standing on stage, and he looked like fully naked. So it was pretty funny.
I mean, there were very few bits this year, and they actually
I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, it did shorten the runtime, but that was the one bit, and that went over well. It's always going to be a mixed bag where, some of the introductions were really good and some of them were like, moving along.
Right.
I know. I like a little bit of humor, and this is one that landed. I was going to ask, what do you think of Kimmel's hosting?
It was fine. Okay. There was he did the job. He did it without embarrassing himself or us. And he kept it, everything moved along. The jokes were funny. The real-time Donald Trump joke was funny, and I didn't realize that was real. At first I was like, is this some sort of bit? What is going on? And then I saw later that was he was really responding to a real-time tweet. And so again, and I don't want to get into that side of the politics of things, but the fact that people were in the show picking up like Divine's jokes or any of the other jokes, that there was a liveliness to it and awareness of itself, and that people were bringing that awareness and real-time reaction into the show makes the show feel more dynamic and alive rather than just some cookie cutter thing where we're just marching forward. And so I did appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who is the guy who did the long little bit about Field of Dreams, like narrating the... John
Delaney.
Yeah, he did a really good job.
Yeah.
And I heard some chatter that people were sort of trying to push him forward as a possible future host.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, he nailed it. And I guess I don't know that much about him. I guess I don't watch his show or listen to his podcast, or fans of his. I'm not even sure exactly what he's famous for, but but he impressed me in that moment.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I think a couple of the other big highlight moments for us, I was watching with my wife, and then our daughter was in and out. She was not as interested. She's not a big movie person, but we wanted her to see a little bit. And she happened to catch when Divine Joy was giving her acceptance speech when she was coming down, and we were admiring her dress and all that kind of stuff. But her acceptance speech was a great way to start the evening off. And I'm really glad that my daughter got to see it because of what she was saying about not trying to be different, just being herself, and about this idea of being seen and being somebody who has a non-traditional Hollywood body type, right? That she's not she's not a slim person who looks in an old traditional way of glamorous. And so I was just really glad for my daughter to be able to see that and participate in that part of that conversation, and to see that, Hollywood isn't just this cookie cutter place. It's actually starting to look and accept all kinds of different perspectives and stories. I thought the drumming circle was really great that they had, which was part of the original song for nominated for the Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah, it's one of the nominated songs. That's why it was there. Yeah.
Yeah.
They did nominate, the Academy nominated that song. So
yeah. And to have that live performance in that way again was a very cool thing. So what other big moments were hit for you?
I really enjoyed the actor presentations. I know that was a mixed review for some. Some
really a mixed review?
Yeah, some said that they just missed having the clips, but I think that's the difference. Is like, have you watched the movies or not? And if if you haven't watched the movies, then maybe you're like, well, wait, what exactly? Because my mom watched a lot fewer of them, so she was asking me the whole time, like, what's this movie about? What's this one with in the snow with the court? Yeah,
that makes sense. I guess I could see that. I mean, I did see all of a lot of those movies recently, and so they're fresh in my mind. I didn't respond to that way. My wife, who hasn't seen most of the movies that were nominated and for those actors or those categories, she said she really enjoyed it. There was a fun continuity to it in terms of past winners. There were some really heartfelt and funny little speeches. I don't know that they would do that. I don't know if that would work every year. But I certainly liked it as a thing that, a style of the presentation. And I look forward to similar themed or similarly inspired award presentations.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have to say the news here today was all about the first Dutch winner in 11 years. So Hoyte van Hoytema, the cinematographer for Oppenheimer,
very cool,
is Dutch. But yeah, so he's a regular Nolan collaborator, and he also did, by the way, like Nope and Spectre and Her and
oh wow, okay,
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, a bunch of stuff. So he's overdue. Good for him.
What do we say? What do you say on the football pitch? Moy ball or something? Is that Moy ball? Good ball? I used to play football with soccer.
Moy ball would be beautiful ball, but I guess I don't know. I'm not a soccer player.
Right. I used to play soccer a little bit in my younger days with a bunch of Dutch folks, and Moy ball. So anyway, I don't know how else to say congratulations to him.
Gefeliciteerd is congratulations.
Cool. Cord Jefferson, I thought of all of the, Hollywood related comments about, of the speeches, I thought Cord Jefferson winning for screenplay for American Fiction had something really interesting to say, which was, look, you're risking a lot to put $200 million on the table. And if that fails, if it wins, you can win really big. But hey, man, consider the fact that you can make, $450 million or, more films for, I'm trying to do math in my head and that's never a good idea. But you could do, $10 million films, right? Like spend that money. Let's spend our money in different ways and promote the arts more. And let's stop being so, it's a weird risk aversion. It's like, I don't want to spend 20 or 30 on you, but I'll put 200 million on this director over here on this big budget sci-fi blockbuster thing. I'm sure there's some sort of Freakonomics, podcast that analyzes game theory and risk behavior and such. But it's, we really are at a place where we could use more smaller offerings rather than one big, fewer, bigger offerings. Does that make sense? Am I talking clearly through this?
Well, I guess I would rather fewer, smaller. I'm personally, I'm overwhelmed with content, but
sure, that's true. That's true.
I want more efforts. Yeah, I want to not just pump out big
blockbuster.
Yeah, but I have nothing against blockbusters. It's
sure,
just,
but
when what Sony's doing with the Marvel stuff, that's I think it's very uncontroversial. Obviously, Spider-Verse aside, into the Spider-Verse animated movies aside, but I would rather just. Let's do these big movies. Let's invest more time and energy in it. Let's invest more creativity in it. Let's try to make it special. Let's think about what are we making this for other than because people spent money on the last similar movie.
Right. Which I think that's still part of this conversation of how is Hollywood spending its money? And when you look at, I mean, I don't know what the budget on American Fiction was, but that's like a really
low,
good,
but yeah.
It was a simple movie in terms of that,
But he had trouble getting the financing, so next time I think it'll be easier. Yeah.
Whereas, what was the? I mean, they completely canned. Was it Batgirl that they just completely threw away?
Well, yeah, that was for a tax write-off.
Well, they after the fact, but I mean, like I don't know. They didn't make it for a tax write-off. Right,
no. But Zaslav didn't make it in the first place. He came in and
Yeah, but so the point is how are our efforts being pushed out? And if we have something like a Madam Web or I know Guardians is beloved by a lot of people, but I mean there's a lot of effort put into a lot of big IP movies with big budget for.
And I say that's
special
great.
Effects.
Just do it well. Do it like Guardians. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And do it well, but then don't only make those, right? Like make the holdovers, make the American Fictions.
I think
don't try to go for a big hit on every swing, right?
Get some
RBIs.
The good news is that by definition, I think indie cinema will always exist. And, there is some of the most interesting movies that I saw this year were I just made on a shoestring budget. Like there's this film called The Artifice Girl, which is one of the most interesting and nuanced looks at the morality of artificial intelligence. Like I would put it up there with Devs, and it's most of it takes place in 2 rooms basically, and just with a superb little actress playing an AI being. And you can have, like, if you have real talent, you can have these places to let them shine. But then I love to see, like, Yorgos Lanthimos, the director of Poor Things. You see his early work and it's like that. And now you see Poor Things and it's people have invested money on him and it gives him a bigger platform to tell his story in a more fantastical way.
Sure.
And I hope that Cord Jefferson gets that same progression in terms of investment in him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page for Anatomy of a Fall, and it's reported there that their budget was $6.7 million.
Okay.
And that movie really affected me in a good way. Like we'll talk about it later, but for $6.7 million, I was so taken, by that. And so I think that's Cord's point is that we can do that kind of stuff. And we can give people like Cord or Justine Triet, more of those opportunities. And Yorgos is the same case, right? Like,
he got those opportunities and he's thriving. Yeah,
exactly. So, let's think about how we're spending our money. I think you made a really good point about that, and I'm just super glad that he won for something. I mean, gosh, what a dream, right? To be inspired by this book and then to have the author, consent and give the rights and then to pull all these amazing actors together. And then his first time directing, like that's an incredible story. That's an incredible story. So we got a voicemail from Red Zippy on the Discord. And I guess Red Zippy is a fan of the red carpet. And so we thought it would be fun to play that here at the top of the episode. So here we go.
Hi, this is Red Zippy 330 with some thoughts about the Oscar show itself. I really loved the actor presentations. That's always so meaningful to me. I love seeing past winners. It makes me remember what I loved about their Oscar-winning performances, and it really seemed to mean a lot to the nominees this year to hear from the actors. So I hope they do that every year. I loved John Cena, who presented costume design in the nude. He looks like the Oscar statuette.
He totally does.
Anyway, but I thought
he looks like the Oscar
that was really funny. I love anytime Kate McKinnon is on stage, so I really appreciated her repartee with Steven Spielberg about dinosaurs and documentaries. Something I've read a lot is that Oppenheimer may have won the most Oscars, but Barbie won the Oscar night. Was there really, truly anything better than I'm Just Ken? No.
Nope.
That was absolutely fantastic. I will rewatch it over and over again. That was by far the highlight. I also enjoyed Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt with their little Barbenheimer skit there. That was really cute. I loved John Mulaney when he presented for sound. He needs to host the Oscars one day.
There you go.
I really love him.
More people voting for him.
I appreciated the stunt montage, but all it really seemed to do was solidify the fact that the Academy needs to have a category for stunt choreography. And Jimmy Kimmel was okay. He did really well. Loved his past your jail time comment after he read the tweet by Donald Trump. That was really funny. And then regarding the awards, I went 9 out of 23. And I was happy that I missed 2 of those. One was for sound. It went to Zone of Interest instead of Oppenheimer. And then, of course, Emma Stone winning for Poor Things, which just thrilled me to death. I screeched and jumped out of the chair. I was just enchanted by her reaction. I know she was genuinely surprised, but she had the best performance of the year, hands down. We continue to see the international scope and the effect that that is having on the voting body. We see it in nominees, of course, but winners, Parasite being the big one. But this year, to see Boy and the Heron win over Spider-Man in animated, to have Zone of Interest win in sound, and even Emma winning for Poor Things. And Poor Things was probably a more accessible movie around the globe. Well, I don't know, given the content, but we're definitely seeing more and more international effects there. I loved Cord Jefferson's speech, especially about telling the studios that instead of making one $200, oh, if only, one $200 million movie, they should make 10 $20 million movies. Couldn't agree more. Cillian Murphy, loved the end where he dedicated his Oscar to all the peacemakers. Was bummed that Wes Anderson wasn't there, but he never goes to these anyway. But I was thrilled that he finally won an Oscar. He's one of my favorite directors. Again, yay for Poor Things, winning so many awards, well-deserved. Lastly, I feel bad for Martin Scorsese. How many times will his movies go, oh, for blank?
Oh.
He doesn't win. I would love to hear your guys' opinion on that. What is up with that? I mean, that's just got to stink. And then lastly, poor Bradley Cooper, whose movie also didn't win anything. I know he wants an Oscar, but I think he's going to go and get one by way of George Clooney, Brad Pitt, for a supporting actor nom. I think that's how he's finally going to get his Oscar. It's just going to have to be one of those. Anyway, I enjoyed talking and chatting with everybody during the show last night, and it is time to get some sleep. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Red Zippy. Yeah, Red Zippy was with us last night in the Discord, so that was a lot of fun. And thanks for sending in your thoughts. Always appreciate it. And thanks to everyone who participated in our big run-up conversation. That was really cool to hear a lot of our community from near and far. What do you think about this Scorsese?
I do have to point out, he did win once. He does have one Oscar for The Departed in 2006. But he's been nominated a bunch of other times and not won. But he has movies I think that he were worthy, and not that this one wasn't. It's just he's not personally my favorite director, and I know a lot of other people, for them he is. So good for them.
Right.
Nolan also didn't have an Oscar. Nolan didn't have an Oscar at all yet, so now he finally has one. So,
and it's a tough year to compete. I mean, there was a lot of strong contenders. I think when you look at the films that won, well, outside of say the blockbusters, but a number of the other ones, it comes down to the strong story work. And this is my personal opinion. I just didn't find that the Killers of the Flower Moon plot had a strong story. So it
That's
didn't.
Fair.
That's where I sort of come in on it. And it's got to be hard. I mean, both for De Niro and him to just be sitting there the whole night. What are you going to do? And I get,
they're still De Niro and Scorsese. They're fine.
Right, exactly. And I understand, Bradley Cooper really wants an Oscar, but are you making art to get an Oscar, or are you making art to make the art and have that kind of success, and then the Oscar is a byproduct of what your efforts produce?
Yeah, we'll see if this does anything, to shake him out of that. That naked ambition, let's say.
Yeah, and I mean, is he? What is he seeking in that regard? He's made some incredible films. I don't know him. Yeah, it's so don't. You have the fame, you have the clout, you can make so many movies. People will let you make movies, and so do that, and then see what happens, as opposed to chasing. I don't know if he's chasing some kind of legitimacy or something like that.
I don't know.
That's too much psychological speculation on my part.
But it's so she brings up the casting versus stunts controversy, which was interesting. We were commenting in the Discord about that, how they came out with the stunts montage, which is sort of like sorry, the castings. So casting, we talked about this previously in another episode, but there's a casting branch of the Academy, and they've been lobbying for a really long time. And so now next year, they're finally getting a casting award. And that's somewhat controversial because, first of all, people are wondering, like, how is that going to be translated into voting? Is that just going to be like
how do you judge casting?
And then the even bigger part of the controversy is that people really feel like stunts should have an award. And then so they put together that, we value stunts. Here's a stunts montage. And it's like, well, now you just reminded us how much we need a stunts award.
Exactly. And how hard they work. And the kind of efforts that goes into that kind of thing, where we can objectively judge it on screen in some ways, where casting, it is. It's a little bit more ephemeral. It's harder to understand what goes into casting. They really are magicians in terms of how they compare and find people for the role. It really is an art. I just don't know how to judge it. I just don't know how. I think
voters are going to struggle to figure out how to judge it.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
And the one other negative review that people gave to last night was the In Memoriam. It was hard to see the honorees.
Yes.
Yeah, because they zoomed out, and so they had this whole artistic thing going on around it, which is lovely. But then, if the people at home can't see the names of the people who died, then what's the point of the segment?
I was really frustrated, especially when, say when Carl Weathers came up, or, some of the other people. I was like, and then but they were just, the name and their picture was so far away from where the camera was. And I certainly appreciated the dancing and the music, but
Andrea Bocelli was there himself. That's great.
Yeah, the goodbye song.
But just have Andrea Bocelli and
right, and then you can fade in and out between him and the on screen. Yeah,
all we need is his voice and the montage.
I was really confused too with Al Pacino. He was just sort of like, what happened? I'm not sure. Some people seem to think it's funny and having fun with it, and I just kind of was like, well, that's very strange.
Would you hope that they keep or ditch next year?
I certainly hope that they ditch the In Memoriam section, not the section, but the presentation. I want them to go back to where we actually can see on screen some of that stuff. I thought, I think that's the only thing. I liked the pacing of the music for the nominated songs, the way that they came out through the evening. I don't think that there was anything else that I really wish they would ditch. It all felt really good. And like I said, the presentation for the actors, I don't know if that would just get old every year having.
Right. It does take up a long time. Yeah. And people missed the clips. So I wouldn't mind if they went back, but I did enjoy it this year. I thought it was very touching in some cases.
The clips do lend some credence to, not credence, but context for the actor and what's going on. So, and I really hope they keep that start time.
Me too.
It just worked.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break. And then when we get back, we're not going to go through all of the awards, but we're going to go through the ranking of the top 10 because you and I had our ranks.
Yeah.
And then we'll sort of we'll use that as an opportunity to talk about all the different movies.
The 10 best pictures everyone should watch.
And we are back. All right, let's start talking about the Best Picture 10 nominated films for Best Picture. And we thought this would be kind of a fun way to talk about all of these films because there's a lot of really good, important movies here. Unfortunately, I got a chance to catch up on all of my movie watching. So
unfortunately, I got the chance.
But fortunately, I got it, right? Yeah. Unfortunately, I got hit by a car, but fortunately, I was wearing my helmet. So, there you go. So, yeah, I was happy to see a lot of these and have these keep me company over the last couple of days. We don't know how the voting worked out in the end, actually. Like, we don't see the Oscar voting, but you had you're with the Academy of the Death Racers. You guys are doing an interesting voting process, right?
Yeah, well, you can see if you look at the Academy of Death Racer Awards at the end, they actually show how it worked out with the voting each round. And also the same for there's another awards ceremony on Letterboxd. And it's the same thing where they show each round, like this is what was eliminated. So it was interesting, for instance, with the Deathies to see in the Letterboxd one, Poor Things won, and the Deathies started out with Oppenheimer in a strong lead. But as other films were eliminated, it became neck and neck. And then Oppenheimer just squeaked by. Okay, well, let's start with our number 10s. What was your number 10 for this year? So I did a little switcheroo. Versus what some people have heard me say before. And I decided that my number 10 is Maestro. Oh. And the reason I decided that it's not my number 9 is because I thought about my number 9 has some scenes that I think are really genuinely beautiful and impressive. Mm-hmm. And I would be more likely to want to rewatch that. When I think about Maestro, there are things I appreciate about it, especially from the artistic angle. There's one scene that I really enjoyed, which is like the dancing scene, which basically has nothing to do with the film. But I feel like I got out of it, like I wrung it dry for what I could get out of it. And I don't think I'm ever going to rewatch it. Right. Okay. Fair enough. Mine was Killers of the Flower Moon. There was a lot of beautiful cinematography, a lot of amazing production on it, but I couldn't get into the primary characters and I couldn't get into the story. I was interested in the story. I wanted to know about the story. I wanted to be educated by the story, but I just felt that it was too long. And I know a lot of people say that, and I don't want to just be a broken record, but it was really long. And because it was really long, it didn't compress the story, and so I never felt driven by what was going on. Every time it started to pick up its pace and something interesting started to happen, then it would just got into these long, slow shots where nothing was happening. And there's a lot of setup to something. And it just really, to me, that just caused it to meander too much. And so when I compare it to, other films where the story is really clear and the movie is in service of that story, I just didn't feel that it could be much higher than 10. I know a lot of people like it, and I know a lot of people enjoy it. And I sometimes wonder, I'm like, did I watch the same movie the way that people are talking about it? It's really incredible. So it's your number 9. My number 9 is Maestro. So I enjoyed the film a lot for what it did in the way that it told its visual, the visual structure in service to the narrative. And there are some shots in that continue to stay with me. I think I talked about one in our first podcast for the Oscar series where there's this sort of long pergola scene and there's a conversation where we don't see the people, but it sounds like we're right next to them. Or there's a picture during the Macy's Day Parade where a big float passes by a window. There's some stuff that I think it would
really, that visually has stayed with me. And I thought it was a really great performance by Bradley Cooper. But at the same time, there was just something that was so tightly packaged together that, and we talked about this before, it didn't feel organic in some way. It was too polished, which is a weird thing to say because we want polish. No. So,
No, but it didn't have the humanity. Well, I mean, it was there because it's showing an imperfect man, but it's just, it missed the spark somehow.
Yeah, and it's completely strange that it missed the mark because on paper it's a really
well,
great
the spark,
story.
I mean, gives it that extra life that makes it something that touches you.
Because if you read this on paper, this sounds amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But then on screen, just couldn't. Yeah, there was just something there. Okay. What about you? What's your number 9?
My number 9 is Oppenheimer.
You really don't like this film.
Well, I mean, it's not that I dislike it.
I shouldn't put it that way.
I think it's a good film. It's just that I found the majority of it the most boring way to present the material possible in a way that left zero impact on me. But then between that were these brilliant, impactful scenes. Mm-hmm. And that's the movie that I was hoping for. And I have to say, full disclaimer, I wasn't a fan of Dunkirk either because because in Dunkirk, there are 4 leads who all look the same. And my friend and I watched it together and neither of us, she knew one of them was Harry Styles. And so that's how I learned who Harry Styles was. And that was the only one we could follow.
Okay. I still have not watched Dunkirk. I need to rectify that. But
it's a good story, but it's just it's just getting just bogged down in the details where Christopher Nolan really shines as a director is when he in those scenes in Oppenheimer where, for instance, minor spoiler for the back half, where Cillian Murphy is hallucinating in an auditorium and he's seeing the effect on his victims. Those were the scenes that were really impactful. And that's the Christopher Nolan touch. And that was really what made me feel and think and be touched. And I wanted more of that.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Let's move on to number 8. When you want to start us off?
Sure. So this is where Killers of the Flower Moon comes in for me.
Strong.
8 is strong? I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it's the reason why it's so, I agree with a lot of what you say, and I'm not in general a huge Scorsese fan. There are certain movies of his I rather like, and in general, I'm not a Scorsese fangirl. This one, honestly, it gets ranked as high as it does because I do appreciate the Osage representation. So a lot of the credit goes to the production designer and and Hoyte van Hoytema, the cinematographer, and the costume designer and the people who really brought this world to life.
It did feel like a really good representation of this world. It did really feel like the time. The production design and the costuming was incredible. And there were some beautiful shots in there. But for me, they all just seemed almost, it's okay, that's the shot. I get it. You set this whole thing up for that shot. Okay.
Right.
Where's the story? The shots never felt to me in service of this story.
No, I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I am glad it was made, and I'm glad that part of our history has been documented by a book and now a movie to make it even more widely available to people. So,
right. Absolutely. Yeah. And what was your number 8?
American Fiction.
Okay.
I really enjoyed this movie a lot. But it was also a first time movie, and there were times where I could feel the edges of that and in some of the production and the lighting. But it was a fun film. I had a great time seeing it, and I really enjoyed the conversation that it sparked. And I'm really glad that Cord is hopefully. This is going to be a really big spark to light a fire under him, because I think he's got a lot of things to say, and I'm really excited to hear what he's got.
Yeah. Okay. And what was your number 7?
Past Lives.
Too low, Dave.
This was I watched it. We did. I think it was our first or second movie or, Oscar podcast. Maybe it was the second one. Or maybe it was the first one. I can't remember now. I was with my wife and I said, we have to watch this movie. We've got to watch it now. Or so we watched it and really enjoyed it. And it didn't blow me away, but I loved it. I loved the performances. The lead actor, she was amazing. Her physical performances. I don't have her name on the top of my head right now.
Greta Lee.
Yeah. And her performance was phenomenal. And it was a very cool script and a very cool story. And, again, probably one of these, under $10 million movies, right? I mean, I'm sure the biggest expense was, just
it was a first time writer. I mean, even more first time than Cord Jefferson because he has all those TV connections. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Okay. So there you go. It was really
Celine Song is her name, by the way. Yeah.
Okay. It was really well put together. It was beautifully shot. And I think it was a lovely film. But it didn't transport me the same way that I know, like for you, it was very transportive.
Right. Well, I think, that's obviously higher on my list. So I'll talk about why I love it then.
Yeah, it looks like that one came in at 12 million. So I could imagine with the international scope of it, it costs a little bit more. And it looked a lot more polished than American Fiction.
Yeah.
Okay, what about you? Number 7?
Number 7 for me was The Holdovers.
Okay.
I mean, I liked it. It was, an enjoyable, the characters were cool to hang out with, but it didn't make a huge impact on me, or someone else said that it was, a well done collection of cliches. And I'm like, well, yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
And I think, I've said before, it just doesn't feel like there's pointed. There's as much of a point to it, the story, or it's just kind of, let me tell you a little tale about this winter at a prep school in the 70s and, people being people. And that's all great. And I understand why a lot of people connected with it. I really liked it. I liked other things even better.
Yeah. For me, it falls into the Cat Stevens genre of films of like, let's examine the human condition and play some soulful music, some folksy soulful music around it.
But they even quoted Cat Stevens in the movie.
Totally. And there was a bona fide Cat Stevens song in there as well.
Where does this rank for you?
Oh, sorry. Where are we? What are we talking about?
Number 6 is next.
Number 6 is next. So, that is my number 6. So I guess that's what we're, I guess we could just roll that straight forward into that conversation. It took a while for it to get to where it wanted to go, which is fine. And I get that. I thought that Paul Giamatti's performance was really good. And I think that's why it ranks a little bit higher for me. And especially the whole thing with his physical appearance. And I don't want to spoil anything if you haven't seen it, but there's a thing that goes on with that. And I thought that was done well in terms of how they produced it.
I loved Nicolas Cage's comments about that during the actor presentations. He was like, would I have done that? He's like, of course I would have, but it's really good that you did.
Exactly. I was starting to cringe when when Nicolas Cage, I was like, oh God, what is he going to say? And it was really sweet in the
Nicolas
end. Cage. He's got a little weird in his last years. So.
He does. He's doing his most brilliant, sometimes unhinged, but some of his best work. Watch, if you want to see Nicolas Cage, best actor fodder, watch Pig from the other year. But anyway.
Oh, okay.
It's about a guy who's has a truffle pig that gets stolen.
Okay. Interesting. All right. There you go. I thought the reason that Holdovers ranks at 6 for me is because of the way that the story was crafted. Not only the story was crafted, but the way that the story was shot. They intentionally made it look and act like a movie from the 70s. There was even a couple of rack zooms where, there's a really fast zoom in and the camera bounces a little bit. That's a signature thing from the 70s. Not intentionally so, but that's something that they did. The color grading, all of the sets and the design looked very much of period, and so it felt really well put together. And I thought all of the acting was spot on. Obviously, Divine Joy, wins for best supporting. And I thought Paul Giamatti was really, his performance was really strong. And I totally get, well, for some people, this film just wouldn't spark anything. This is a film of a generation. It's a dead poet. It comes from that era.
Very Dead Poet Society.
Dead Poets, My Bodyguard. All of these kinds of morality tales on screen. So I can understand why a friend of my wife's was saying that she had a spare moment, went to go see it, and in the theater, and completely hated it and didn't understand.
Hated it. Oh, wow.
Yes, exactly. And I get it. Right. It's you're not if you're not expecting it, and it's from a time. It's definitely
and we should mention that there is some controversy where there's been a copyright claim made against Alexander Payne for the script. So pending, but that just worth noting.
I saw that you mentioned something about that on the Discord, and then I just sort of randomly saw some other stuff, and people were looking into that, and it seems I think we're gonna have to wait and see, because the claims also don't seem.
But it is
strong.
Also I said, my friend said that it was cliche written, which maybe just both scripts were cliche written. That's also a possibility.
Well, I think like John says, regarding tropes, you can use them, just, you do them well.
Right. So, exactly. Yeah. And that's the Holdovers did it well. Yeah, exactly.
I think that's where, because the movie, I recognized the movie from my past, from movies that I watched growing up. So I totally get that criticism. So,
right.
All right, let's do number 5.
Well, my number 6 is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did we skip you? I didn't mean to skip your number 6.
My number 6 is American Fiction. And this one, this one was, I think that's between this and The Holdovers, they both kind of fell in the same box where they were pleasant and I enjoyed them, but they didn't hit me as hard as the other ones. But I think of the two, American Fiction is the more original, is saying something more current. It's saying something
that's
important. And I personally, my mentality vibed with me more.
Yeah, no, I can.
Sometimes
it
just comes down to vibes. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a much more relevant in terms of our current conversations, where Holdovers definitely was an era.
Yeah, it's a nostalgia flick, but which is great too. I like that also, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now we can do our number 5s. What's your number
5? So my number 5 is Anatomy of a Fall.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's interesting to see when certain places where we line up and then in other places where we don't.
Well, I mean, so Anatomy of the Fall was, for me, I was intrigued enough. For me, the biggest thing was I studied psychology, and a lot of what we study is also about the fallibility of witness testimonies. And I really appreciated the parts of the script, especially that went into things like that. And it made me, I saw that Justine Triet, the director, had only made like 5 movies. So I went and watched them all. And it ended up being my like third or fourth favorite of hers. So,
okay.
But I quite like it, but also she's now become a favorite director of mine. I hope that she brings back in some of the zaniness of her prior movies.
Okay.
That she's really someone who sees the imperfections of people and says, like, let's lean into it. This is what makes people who they are. This is what makes them interesting. And just the way that they, we see the court systems, how they are using prejudice, like, oh, you're bisexual, then you must be promiscuous. And then, and then on the other hand, just a marriage is going to be full of conflict as well as good times. And this movie reflected that complexity of a human relationship very well.
Yep. It's a little bit higher up on my list, so I'll save it till we.
Okay. And your number 5?
My number 5 was Poor Things.
Okay.
I know you have it higher.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's a dear film for you. I really enjoyed this movie a lot. I'm really glad I saw it. I had a fun time watching it. I was entertained. I was, sort of provoked in a lot of to think about a number of things. Visually, it was beautiful, and I don't know how this comment might come off, but it's like an adult version of a Wes Anderson film, just in the fantasticalness of it all. And I thought that was really beautiful and fun to sort of take away from some of the more serious aspects that they were talking about. But ultimately, I got let down a little bit by the end, and I won't say anything specifically if you haven't seen it. But for me, it felt a little predictable in the very end, the very last set of scene. I get it, and I understand it. I have no problem with it, but it then just sort of brought it back into a conventional film for me, as opposed to something that really was groundbreaking or transported me in a lot of ways. But I said, I'm not saying that I didn't like the film. I loved the film, but it didn't. The final note was nice, but it didn't push me into that next realm of like, oh wow, what did I just watch? Oh, that was amazing, kind of.
It's interesting because they changed the ending versus the book, and I find the movie ending much more satisfying.
Interesting. Okay. Fair enough. Well, it's hard to not want to talk about it to fully break it down. Because if you haven't seen this film, you have to go see this film.
Yeah, Emma Stone.
Sorry, yes, my brain's all ajar. Her performance, she absolutely deserved that Oscar, in my opinion. Of all the performances of that we saw, hers was the most. She took the biggest journey. Right. I think literally in the film, she took a journey, as well as what she had to do as an actor to perform that role was incredible. She put in the work, and it was incredible to watch. Absolutely. So,
yeah.
Cool.
So what's your number 4?
Oppenheimer is my number 4. It was beautiful. I wish I could have seen it on a big screen. I get why everybody said see it on a big screen. It was a really interesting story. I was fascinated by the history and the way that he wove the different threads together. And at the same time, it was a big movie, and it really went, I don't know. I wasn't transported in the same way, but visually it was incredible. I think the way that they built the tension, the way that they're, the antagonists, Robert Downey Jr.'s character as a friend and then later not a friend. I thought that was all super interesting. I felt it suffered a little bit too much from too many stars. Everybody kept popping up, and I was like,
too many characters, too many.
Yeah. Well, I didn't mind the too many characters, but it was just like everybody. Oh, it's Kenneth Branagh. Oh, it's Matt Damon.
Well, I was bad because that was the only way I remembered who was
who. Fair enough. That's a good point. So, but yeah, and it was an incredible performance by Cillian Murphy. So, I really enjoyed it, and it's a big film. It was a great film to see. So, what about you?
Yeah. My number 4 was The Zone of Interest.
Okay.
It was, it's a new way of, and people are like, oh, not another Holocaust movie. I'm the first one, like, not another Holocaust movie.
Right.
But this is literally
prior to us doing sorry to interrupt you, but prior to us doing this Oscar prep stuff, that was my reaction as well.
Right. It
was like, oh, okay. And having seen it, I have a different opinion. Please continue.
Yeah, it's obviously in your top 3 because you haven't named it yet. But yeah, no, it's literally looking at it from a new angle. The Jonathan Glazer, the director, he's a bit hit or miss for me, to be honest. Like, I didn't like the Scarlett Johansson one, Beneath the Skin. I thought it was okay, but it's just, I don't know. I get impatient with his stuff. But this, I was captivated for every second. And that has a lot to do with the cast, a lot to do with the production design, setting, and of course, the Oscar-winning award sound mix.
Right.
And it's just showing how relatable these people were, but also how disturbing they were at the same time. Yeah. And it's uncomfortable, but it wasn't as heavy as I expected in a weird way. I think it was also because I was in a theater that saw it as a dark comedy, and we kind of laughed a lot of stuff. Also because I was in a theater where most people can understand German pretty well.
Right.
It was a more enjoyable watch, and people were like, "I'll never watch it again." I was like, "Oh, I'll absolutely watch it again." I think there's more that I can take out of it now that I have processed it.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. The sound. I heard an interesting quote that they made 2 movies. They made a visual movie and an auditory movie, And I totally...
Well, they made 2 auditory movies and then layered them over each other.
Sure. Well, but you know what I mean? I'm like, there's the what's going on over there, which we can only hear, and then what we have here, which is what we can see.
Right.
And that blending, and I thought, well, I'll talk about it when we get it to my positioning, but I think I largely agree with you for a lot of the same things that you were saying. I thought I was going to go into watching this. I saved it till one of the later movies I watched. And I was kind of like, oh, I got to brace, I got to be ready for this or whatever. And it wasn't. It really was a much, it wasn't, what's the word? There was a lightness to it, which is not.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It didn't have a heavy gravity, or it wasn't really pulling on my heartstrings. It was just it was almost documentarian in a way. It was almost like,
he said Big Brother in the Nazi house. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
He just had the hidden cameras capturing the family and the fact that it was a sunny setting and a garden and the river and
exactly.
And then suddenly there's a skull in the river and you're like, oh, right.
Right. Exactly. Yes. And you kind of keep having to, or you hear a sound and you're like, oh yeah, that's something that I gotta remember where we are here. And I thought and I'll just say this now, and we'll talk about where it is in my position later, but that it's not only in the construction of the movie itself, but then what it is reminding us of. The importance of it's not just about, here's this family that saved this other family, or here's this wealthy industrialist that saved a whole bunch of people. And if they hadn't set up this thing and gotten people right, okay, it's all tugging at our heartstrings and it's great. We've heard this story. Got to remember that the reason that the Holocaust happened is because a whole lot of people participated in it on a day-to-day nuts and bolts process. Mm-hmm. And we have to remember that. We have to remember that is that banality of evil is real. And I think that this film captures it in a way that you can watch this and not be moralized at. Mm-hmm. You can be this observer, and then you remember and you hear that sound and you're like, oh yeah, that's what's going on here. And I thought that really pushed the boundaries of filmmaking. I thought that really did something very important. And I think it's broken new ground in a way to make films at this scale. So,
right. Well, yeah, I think so Jonathan Glazer, the director, he's only made 4 films. 4 feature films. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 4 feature films. So he has Sexy Beast, which is like a Guy Ritchie type film. He's got Birth with Nicole Kidman, which is about a kid comes back and says he's a reincarnated husband, and it's weird and creepy. That's actually my favorite of his. After this one. And then there's Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson, where she's an alien who's studying humanity and hunting humanity and learning empathy along the way. Okay. And it really feels like they feel so different from each other. They do, and it feels like the zone of interest is an evolution where he's learned from all these different things. And, he still has the staid camera, but he's learned how to keep it lively enough to keep people engaged. Yeah, that's one thing, because we're always very removed from the action and the physically distant from our main characters. Like if I didn't know that Sandra Hüller was in this film, I wouldn't have known that was Sandra Hüller, because we never have a lot of intimate close-ups with her in a similar way. And so we're at this remove, but we never feel we always feel connected, and we always feel part of what's going on at the same time, which it's a really weird psychological space to be in. Yeah. And to carry that off through that edit and through that filming process. Yeah, it's really remarkable. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Number 3. My number 3 is Barbie.
My number 3 is also Barbie.
Hey, there we go. The streams have converged.
Why is it your number 3?
I thought it was a lot of fun. It was very cool. It did something that a lot of films don't, in terms of taking a protected product that has a long history and then being able for the filmmaker to be able to take that and to do something unique and novel and surprising and entertaining with it is really exceptional. It's a fun romp. It's beautiful, and it's a big blockbuster. And it was fine. Like it was a cool movie. And when I compare it to some of my top two, it didn't move me as far or in the same way. Okay. But that said, I loved it. I have a good time watching it. I really want to be able to watch it with my family. Our daughter doesn't enjoy movies as much, and so hopefully one of these days we'll get her. We'll get it on streaming, and we'll watch it as a family together. I think it would be a lot of fun. I am really itching to see it again because we didn't see it. We saw it in the theater last summer, and so
yeah, it's on Max. So I think I did find it very moving. I cried in the theater. I love when you can tell a story that makes me laugh and makes me cry. And, and candy colored wrapping is perfect. Wonderful.
Right.
Just brilliant. It's a brilliant comedic performances, which are really underrated in Hollywood and at the Oscars,
totally
but
agree.
Also with a lot of emotional punch. And it just wove so much together so impressively about societal ideas about Barbie and about, women and men in general, and also the history of Barbie, and also with classic film history. Did you notice, by the way, that the performance of I'm Just Ken at the Oscars last night was a tribute to Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend?
I didn't in the moment. It felt familiar. Like I think I got it on a subtext, and then I saw later somebody mentioned that, and I was like, oh, of course it was. Like that's why it worked.
Yeah, with
that's
the
why
pink
it was so
outfit
fun.
And the gloves, and
Absolutely.
them picking him up and spinning him around. And,
exactly, and the tuxedos and the whole thing. Yeah, absolutely. So that kudos to them for being smart like that. Right?
And they did that throughout the movie itself too. So it was just a delightful experience in every way to watch it, because it just hit every note that I want from a movie. And the only reason it's not higher is because there's one movie that just like burrowed into my heart, and another one that did the things Barbie did, but on another surreal level.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where we have to think about how we're judging our criteria is like how was I moved by this piece of art, and what spaces did it take me to, and how far did it take me? And I totally agree. All right, well, here we are, our number twos. What is your number two, Elysia?
My number two is Past Lives.
Yes, you love this film.
Yeah, I mean, but it's also it's kind of made for people, by people like me, for people like me, I guess, because it's very specifically about the experience of being caught between two worlds, which is how I've seen myself my entire life, whether that's between two families growing up. I'm a child of divorce, between two cultures in that regard, between the US and the Netherlands. Just every and the people that you meet along the way, and what
could have been, and
just also just the ways that love isn't the cliches that you see in rom-coms. Love is comes in so many different forms, and sometimes the greatest love is just saying, I understand that you have a loving relationship with someone else I'm not a part of, and I respect and love that because that's part of you. It's part of what makes you who you are.
Right. And that was really beautiful part about the film. The ending was so poignant and so beautiful, and so sometimes life is just about accepting something that kind of sucks, but is bittersweet in the same way.
Does it suck? Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's just like, on the it's a bitter, well, as we say, bitter pill.
It's like deciding not to be hurt by something because, you like, nobody doubts, no character in this film ever doubts their affection and love for each other at any point. Right. But they still go through these complex emotions together. And that's what I love about it. And just, when the idea, she's like, I dream in Korean sometimes, and even tries to learn Korean to be closer to her boyfriend, and just all the beautiful gestures, but how we can never we can never fully understand each other. And there are going to be people who understand certain parts of us and other people who understand other parts of us. And that's what makes life beautiful.
Yeah. And I think Greta Lee beautifully encapsulated that in her performance.
Mm-hmm.
And
Celine Song's writing is just...
Yeah, no doubt. It was a really, really enjoyable film to watch. I'm so glad that
I still want to cry about it. How many months later?
Fair enough.
And your number 2?
Anatomy of a Fall. Mm-hmm. This film did, I can't say, it elicited so many emotional responses from me. At first I was like, oh, what is this? I'm going to watch some, I don't know. I had a lot of mixed feelings going into it. And then by the end of it, I had no idea how I ended up where I ended up, but I looked back on that emotional journey that the film took me on. And I was really astounded that it was able to capture me, to bring me in, to keep me at times on the edge of my seat, and other times to be anxious and nervous, other times to be like sort of heartbroken and soulful. And it broke a lot of Hollywood rules. Like there's a lot of things that in another movie would have happened or should have happened. The ending, they're just, and I don't want to say anything because I don't want to spoil the enjoyment of the film. But my brain kept wanting certain things to happen. And I was like, oh my God, Hollywood has like trained me to respond in this situation. This certain, something's going to happen, right? This is what's going to happen. My brain kept trying to predict that. And it didn't do that. That film didn't do that. Every time it subverted that expectation that I had for it. So I really appreciated that. The performances were phenomenal. The acting of the dog. No,
no, seriously. Like that dog was so good at playing dead. They even, when he came to the Oscar luncheon where they kind of got in trouble for bringing him, and he wasn't supposed to come to the Oscars, but then he did. The trainer had him playing dead there, and someone was rushing up like, oh my God, is he okay? He's acting.
Didn't see the film. Yeah, exactly. He's acting. So yeah, really, really enjoyed this movie. And I totally would have, if we hadn't done this, if you hadn't brought this idea forward, there's no way I would have bothered to see this film. And I'm so glad I saw this film. It really spoke to me on a lot of levels, and it did what I want movies to do, which is to transport me, to take me out of this world, take me into their world, and then take me on a journey. And I was completely gobsmacked by the end of this at where it went. So,
yeah. And so speaking of films you probably wouldn't have otherwise watched, that leaves number 1 for you.
Yes. The Zone of Interest. And we talked a whole bunch about it just a minute ago, so we won't go too much into it, but I think sometimes, there's our enjoyment. There is what a film does just for the sake of a film, like how the film was constructed, how it was acted, all the special effects, all that kind of stuff. And then there's the impact on society. Was it just entertainment? Like The Holdovers, it was great. I really enjoyed it. I had a really lovely time seeing it, but it didn't move me it didn't move my sense of social, like what's going on in society in the same way that this movie did.
This movie kind of blew your mind in that regard a little, I guess.
I think it's really important that we got to, and I said this before, and I'm just repeating myself here, is that we have to remember that the Holocaust happened because people were complicit and they went along with it. And we're at the stage right now where we need to be reminded of that. And we need to touch that part of history and remember what it is that happened so that we can stop it from happening again. And I thought that this movie did that. It's a society changing movie that broke ground for cinema and told a story in a different way and was expertly acted. And, so all of it just all around was par excellence, and it moves the needle for us as a species on, I don't know how to describe, humanity, us on this planet. It's reminding us of something that we have to remember. And it's very important. So I took that sort of last little bit and said, no, that's got to be, it was going to be in my top 3, just in terms of construction of what it does as a movie. But then that final little bit sort of makes it, I think, my number 1. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
What about you?
That leaves Poor Things for me, which,
Yes.
I mean, I have to admit, I do in general love Lanthimos and I love Emma Stone. And so I was inclined to like it. I also like a Frankenstein tale. I like a fanciful tale. I like a, modern take on Victorian settings. I went through a huge steampunk phase.
Okay.
So it has all the ingredients. But the reason why I love Lanthimos is that his films, and this is the adaptation again of an Alistair Gray novel, which I cannot recommend enough. If you like the film, you're going to find some key differences.
Same title?
Yeah. But the difference is that in the book, the majority of the book is narrated from the perspective of Rami Youssef's character, the assistant / no spoilers.
Right. It makes sense. That would be a good point of view. I could get that as a good point of view from the book.
But then I think that the movie does a huge service. And then Bella's point of view in the book comes in later and in a kind of confusing way. And the movie just says we're going to tell it all from her perspective. And so...
That's a good choice.
Yes. And I just ask so many questions that I find really important that I've been pondering myself for a number of years. So it just really... sometimes, your favorite movie is just because it hits the sweet spot for you. It just connects with things that are important to you and that you enjoy. And this is that case. It's just absolutely gorgeous. I find it really funny, but also, really heartbreaking. I think of her when she realizes that she can't help people. I'm like, oh, honey, that's me every day, And it just is, it does so much in one film. It just covers so much grounds and so beautiful and entertaining and funny. It's just everything I would want in a film of the year. Yeah,
no, absolutely. It's a triumph on so many levels. Ruffalo is very funny.
Right.
Both Defoe and Rami Youssef. Rami Youssef were charming as well. I love the inversion of the Frankenstein story and the way that it's paced and where she goes and what she does is, and how she does it. It's phenomenal. And I would caution, sorry, that's not the right word. I would flag for anybody who's heard certain things about the film. Don't listen to that other stuff about it's not the movie. Is not about sex.
Yeah, but be prepared. There will be sex. So there is sex in it, if you need to.
Yeah, exactly. And it does talk about sex worker trade and that kind of stuff. But that's not what this film is about at all.
No,
it's about the progression of a person going through all of this growing. And I love the fact that Lanthimos acknowledges the fact that sex is an important part of our physical beings and our realities. And he doesn't shy away from that. The camera doesn't turn away from it. Yeah. And that's part of her journey, but it's not the totality of her journey. So
did you ever read the book Stranger in a Strange Land by Heinlein?
No, I don't think so.
It was one of, I read it at a probably younger age than most would have, I guess, but it's stuck with me for that reason, because I read it as a teenager ever since. But it's about a human who was accidentally left behind or whatever. He was born on and raised on Mars by Martians, because this is, back when they were doing a lot of people live on Mars stories. And so then he's discovered by Earth astronauts who bring him back to Earth, and he has to learn how to be human as an outsider. And I love a good story like this. And this has some weird parallels with that. Like some of the lines that I quote for life are from that movie, where he's like trying to figure out, why do we laugh? And he realizes, we laugh because it hurts too badly. And that's the only thing that releases the pain.
Interesting.
And asking questions about the possessive nature of romantic relationships and things like that. So this film has some interesting parallels with that. I just realized.
Yeah, very cool. And I agree that the way that it examines the nature of relationships, and especially I think when you put Poor Things next to Barbie, it's a really interesting combination. It's a powerful combination because it's examining, for so long, all of our movies are all about, and not all of our movies, I shouldn't say it that way, but a lot of the dominant media, especially for when I was growing up, is all about a boy's journey and a hero's journey and, you know, what the guys are up to and what our relationships are like. These two movies really examine very closely what it's like for women to move through life and make choices and to have this feeling like, why are you trying to possess me? I like the way that was portrayed in Poor Things was so interesting. It's like, especially, you know, no spoilers, but the ending sort of sequence, the final dramatic set of events, and to examine this question of possession and this question of identity, it's so interesting, and it was so expertly told.
I have to say that Barbie does have one advantage over Poor Things. I was just thinking about is that Barbie does look more also at the male side of things more,
yes.
whereas Poor Things looks more at where men can be held liable in the typical roles that they play and holding women back. Barbie also looks at, you know, how men are held back and holding themselves and each other back societally in a similar way women do, but different. That's specific to our societal norms for each gender.
Yeah. It's interesting because Poor Things almost has a very singular focus with Emma's
very
character.
Bella focused,
yeah, very Bella focused. Whereas Barbie is looking at a much bigger, wider social structure. How are our social norms reinforced? How they reinforce each other? And so, yeah, I think when you take these two films together, it's really interesting. You're kind of going from, you know, quantum physics or something to you know, Newtonian physics. I don't know. I'm being Oppenheimer about here, but the idea of scale, right? Where at one scale, this thing's happening, and at this other scale, this other stuff is happening. And it's a really fascinating look.
Right. To Einsteinian physics.
Einsteinian, yes, to Newtonian physics. There we go. Cool. Well, I Elysia, thank you so very much for suggesting this whole series, and I'm really glad that I saw all 10 of these movies. I feel much more enriched in my life, and I had a fun time watching a lot of these. So I'm really glad that we got to do this. I think we've got a little piece of feedback from Jimmy to sort of round out our coverage. Do you want to read this? I can hear my voice is starting to get a little froggy.
Sure.
So.
Sure. So Jimmy says, "Hi, everyone. Thank you for the great podcast. Got into this podcast a few months ago because I know Jean personally and started listening to the Marvel episodes. Yay. Although the yay inserted by me. Although the term death racers is new to me, for over 10 years, I've made the effort to watch all the Oscar nominated movies and short films. So I've thoroughly enjoyed the Oscars coverage episodes.
Another even though there joins the race.
Well, was already in the race without knowing it.
Just didn't know he was racing.
Even though there are always going to be numerous Oscar snubs each year, there's one that's been bothering me this year. It's my favorite movie of the year, All of Us Strangers. I felt that it belonged in all the major categories, but especially Andrew Scott in the lead actor category. It's such a beautiful film that made me cry, along with the strangers sitting to my left and right when I saw it in theaters. It's the movie I've been recommending to everyone to see. Anyways, I just finished finalizing my Oscar predictions. Looking forward to your next episode after the winners are announced. Warm regards, Jimmy."
Thanks, Jimmy, for writing in, and glad we have a Jean fan there. One of Jean's people coming in.
Have you heard of All of Us Strangers?
No, I haven't heard a single thing about
so
it.
Yeah,
it is right now.
It's arguably the biggest snub that got nominated for nothing. Because since May, December at least got one nomination.
Right.
But it is, so it's Andrew Scott he plays a lonely man, a gay man who is dealing with some childhood trauma. And he's coping with it in a way. He has sort of a fuzzy connection with reality, you know, in terms of processing. So he's visiting his parents, but it's like quite literal the way it's presented on screen, and then that's sort of explored. And then along the way, he meets Paul Mescal's character, who's a neighbor of his, and seems to be an equally lonely person.
Okay.
And it's very beautiful. It's kind of twisty. It's devastating, left me feeling very sad, but it's a very good film. And for me, Andrew Scott is the best male lead performance of the year. Although I would I would say Mezcal should have been nominated, but I still think Charles Melton should have been nominated and won for May December. But yeah, Andrew Scott gives this. He's best known for being like the hot priest in Shameless. Sorry, not Shameless. In a Sleazebag. And for being the Moriarty in the Sherlock.
Yes. That's where I knew him from.
He plays a lot of over the top. Yeah.
Right.
And this is just a really quietly devastating performance where a lot of it is just like with the twitches in the corner of his eye, just stab you in the heart.
Okay. Did it make any headway at the Deathies?
It won 2 Deathies. So It won Best Film not nominated for an Oscar, and it won Best LGBTQ plus film.
Nice. Very cool.
So yeah, it's a lot of love for that one, and it should have been nominated. And also, I have to say, The Iron Claw should have been nominated about the Von Erich wrestling family.
Okay.
I think, there were some casualties to the strike and to movies being delayed and actors not being able to promote in months in advance. And then some of these smaller films that came out later, they just couldn't generate the buzz quickly enough. Right.
Yeah.
And then looking back, people are like, damn.
It is really interesting too, because there was a lot of international film representation in the big awards here.
True. That pushes out some smaller U.S. films too.
So it's
although All of Us Strangers it's British, but English language films, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Great. Well, thanks, Jimmy, for writing in. I totally appreciate that. And let's take a quick break. And then when we come back, let's look at 2025 ahead, both for our own Lorehounds plans and for some of the films that we should be keeping an eye up so that we're not rushing at the last minute to watch all the films. And we are back. All right, Elysia, let's talk about next year. And let's talk a little bit more specifically about what we might want to do for the Lorehounds in terms of how we cover the Oscars. We really started out as a TV-related podcast with a little, film on the side. So, doing something Oscar-related wasn't directly on the radar, but then, you came with a really strong pitch. And it turns out that there's a lot of people who really are interested in this in our community. And so I think you read the room, you did your homework, and you actually put your finger on something that I think would have been otherwise a miss for our community and the way that our community is growing. So thank you for doing that. And like I said before, I had a lot of fun. So this has been a really great experience.
Well, and you had the great idea of bringing in the extra voices. And I think that really made the series too.
Yes, I think so. And I think that's a fun thing. I think when we think about the Lorehounds, one of the things that we've been talking about is just community as part of our brand, right? And where we came from. John and I came from community. We came out of the Bald Move community. And so community is just always around us. And we're interacting with folks all the time. And we have our Discord and all of our feedback channels and things like that. And so it just seemed natural to want to bring in other voices and this idea that we have a whole bunch of film lovers in our in our midst, and people who is it that was going to there was a couple of folks who were posting from the New York film festivals and other things, and it was like, oh well, Shane and Danny and Adrienne, and it's like, well, we've got to, these people have something to say, so let's bring them in, right? Let's give them a platform. So what do we think about for coverage for next year? I totally think this is an important part of our annual planning for next year. We should definitely do more to promote it a little bit more and cover it a little bit more. Did you like the big format big podcast heavy footprint format, like 2+ hours? Or, I mean, it's a lot to edit. I will say that.
I love a long episode, but
yes.
you posited the idea of doing more shorter episodes and with advanced planning. Yeah, that could be very interesting. I would love to hear what listeners think, what they, like, should we be breaking it down to fewer categories, and then maybe we're going further in depth into each category. But
yeah, because there's a lot to cover, but at the same time, certain categories need to have more conversation around them rather than less.
Sure.
And then is
like
it
Best Picture would become 2 separate episodes probably.
Yeah, and is it 2.5 hour podcast too long? Right. I've got other podcasts I got to listen to. I mean, I just know for my own podcast.
I mean, I'm a huge House of R fan. So like, I think we are really slim on time.
But I think, when I listen to Big Picture a lot, and, Sean and Amanda, they come in around an hour and a half. A lot of times it's Joe and Mal that are the, that break the 2-hour barrier all the time. Exactly. And so, yeah, I don't wonder if doing a few more lightweight, but I think I would love, like you said, to hear from some more folks to see what people would like for that.
Yeah.
I know for just raw recording time and scheduling that in a day, breaking it up is a little nicer, as well as just editing. We could get them out a little bit faster, or we could plan our coverage to spread out a little bit more.
Yeah.
So you get maybe the same content, but
we would still have the window of between. So this year, the nominations were announced on the 23rd, and then probably after that, it'd need a week to finish off the films, and then the ceremonies on the 10th. So that gives like a month and a half.
Right. What do you think about this idea of a pool? Like I had this random idea. I messaged you about, like, should we do like a charity drive pool thing? I mean, because I hear a lot of people talking about betting, and I got this many right and that many wrong, or that kind of stuff. I don't do that kind of thing normally. I was just trying to think of, would that be a fun thing to do to engage people? And if we did it, would that be a good way for us to do some sort of charitable contribution at the same time, which, a lot of
I mean, I think if we have also at least something that people can do without contributing money, because I do a lot of Oscar pools, but I don't pay for any of them, also because I just haven't lately been in a position where I can afford to do that. So
sure.
Respecting that other people will be the same. I think, maybe a couple different options, like one that's just for one that's a charity drive, and maybe another one that's, I don't know, what we have to explore these. But I want to hear what gets people excited, what sounds like fun to the people at home.
Did you use any kind of particular websites this year to track your nominations and your rankings?
So I participated in a prediction contest for the Death Racers, of course, for Vanity Fair, a podcast for for stuff on Letterboxd. So a lot of different random places.
Okay.
But then it's basically mostly just for bragging rights.
Right, exactly. Internet points. Yeah. Well, anything that we would do, the only winnings you would get are internet points, of course. And then, that's where the idea was.
Here.
Yeah. I'm not interested in that. But if we did it in such a way that those who wanted to participate in some sort of financial contribution towards charity or whatnot. But then, then you say it right. Like if, people like are not in a position to do that, does that preclude you from participating? It shouldn't preclude you from participating. And so how do we do it at the same time that it doesn't put people into that weird box? So these are some of the ideas we're going to be kicking around, and we definitely would love input. I think for sure we want a live chat channel on the Discord, so we can do that again. That was a lot of fun. That was great. I really had a good time doing the second screen thing. And it would be fun to, I don't know, it's hard, doing community watches, live watches and things like that are hard on scheduling to find something that works for everyone. But I don't know. I'd like to see some more ways that we could, I think we had a side channel for the award season stuff, and it was a more generic conversation. I think we definitely need a bigger suite of channels on the Discord for the different kinds of conversations that we want to have. So a better infrastructure there, I can totally envision.
Yeah.
So, cool. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about what is coming up in this next year. What do we see are some early runners that we know that are already out there?
We definitely know of one, don't we?
We do. We certainly do. I got to go see it again, either tonight or tomorrow, I think.
I mean, it's funny that, so we're talking about Dune Part 2 in case anyone didn't get there yet. But it's funny that, in the past, people like Dune was supposed to be released at the end of this prior year. And it would have been up against, this year's pack, which would have been
Could you imagine?
Super interesting, much messier. But it was delayed because of the strike and they wanted the actors to be able to promote. What is interesting is that last year's winner, Everything Everywhere All at Once, was released in the spring. And, Past Lives, which is a nominee this year, was released in the spring. And it seems like they are starting to break away from the idea that Oscar movies must... Exactly. Right. Which is so much better for people at home. Like, there were movies like we talked about, like All of Us Strangers and The Iron Claw that missed out because they were kind of too last minute. And also other Oscar nominees like Anatomy of a Fall and The Zone of Interest. People, when they were first nominated, the layperson at home was like, "What was that?"
Yeah.
So I'd like to see more things like Dune that pop up earlier in the year, and we just have all year to be excited about them.
Right. Right.
What kind of nominations do you think it might get?
I have no idea at this stage. My brain is not even there. I'm still trying to process my first viewing of it. We are, and if you're interested, we are pulling together our Dune coverage. We've got, I think, the people who are going to talk about it. I think we have a proto structure. I don't want to release anything until we actually confirm date and time. I don't want to jinx anything, but you and I, Elysia, are definitely going to be on the mic. We're definitely going to be talking about it with a couple of other people. It's going to happen. I need to see it again. I am so, I can't process it right now. I'm still floating in some sort of weird liminal space. So the sound, certainly, the visual effects were pretty incredible. I don't know.
I mean, I think we're looking, so it's eligible for 15 awards, and I think it is a strong contender for basically all of them.
Okay.
I think the biggest, like, it should get screenplay, adapted screenplay, director, best picture, cinematography, production design, costume, makeup and hair, VFX, editing, sound score. The question is, who gets nominated for acting?
Sure. Yeah, that's the question. We got to see what else was up as well.
That's true. But people are already in the Death Racer community making predictions for next year.
Is Bardem up for supporting?
I mean, I think he's a strong contender for that, but also Austin Butler is one that everyone's coming out talking about.
All right, we'll talk about it on the pod.
Rebecca Ferguson for actress. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we got things to talk about that.
But if people are wanting to get a head start on next year, if you're on Letterboxd, I made a Letterboxd list that will link in the show notes, where I've pulled together a lot of the most likely awards contenders into a list. And also, this is also the list where I'm tracking the movies I'm watching all year. So Madam Web's on there. That's not because I think it's going to win awards. It's because I've watched it. So just some highlights from that is there are already, we're talking about this spring no longer barring you from being nominated for the Oscars. So there are some strong contenders in the movie theaters now or coming soon. So I know Love Lies Bleeding it's an A24 feature, and it looks phenomenal. Apparently everyone says it's phenomenal. I'm very excited to see that one. I don't know. It's with Kristen Stewart, and I'm sorry, I forget the other actress's name. And it's something of like a thriller romance. It's kind of hard to parse from the trailer in the best possible way. And then the other big A24 story this year is they're going to try their first blockbuster from Alex Garland, who is someone who I generally really liked, except I didn't like his last movie, Men. But this one, it's called Civil War. And it's
weird.
California and Texas secede from the U.S. But he's apparently wants to not make it political. So it's very confusing. And it's hard to say, is this going to be a smash or is this going to be a car crash?
Yeah.
Which way is this film going to go? It's A24's first gamble in bigger budget territory.
And A24 makes smart bets, right? They're not, they're savvy in this. And so
it instills some faith, but I'm like, I don't know how this is going to turn out.
And it's so weird because we're in an election year and there's a whole swath of the electorate that are in this fever dream of civil war. And I don't know. I just have a lot of mixed feelings about it. So
yeah, absolutely.
We'll see. What's her name? Kristen Dunst. I used to not like her.
Stewart. Yeah.
No, Dunst.
No. In Civil War. Dunst. Sorry. I was sorry. I was back to Love Lies Bleeding. Yep.
I used to, not enjoy her as an actor as much. And I think it was in Fargo, in one of the Fargo TV series. I've really come to love her. I think she's phenomenal. Her. She has done she just does the work and she's so good. And I don't know. I'm so confused about this movie. So we'll see. We'll see. What else we got?
In terms of things that are in the theaters or soon, we've got Drive Away Dolls, which is one of the Coen brothers and his wife, which is supposed to be really wacky, and so it's getting mixed reviews because of that. I like wacky. And Evil Does Not Exist it's a buzzy Japanese film that's just releasing abroad, and then we also have there are movies like The Bike Riders. Bike Riders was a film that was going to be talked about for the award season that we just finished, but it got delayed because of the strikes. So now that's coming out soon. So keep an eye on films that were delayed because of the strikes. It's often because they think there's a good reason it's going to do well later if they have the actors to promote it. So
okay.
And then, of course, just if you want to keep up, just look at what has been winning the awards in Sundance. In the Summers, a movie about some daughters with a problematic relationship with their father, who's both loving and abusive. There's Dee Dee, it's the first feature from the director who did the Grandmother short that was nominated for the Oscars this year, and one of the grandmothers is in it. On the documentary side, Daughters, which is about a daddy-daughter dance at a prison, and Evelyn, which is about a young man with muscular dystrophy passes away, and his parents are touched when they start receiving all these letters from members of his gaming community around the world. And so they created this documentary about it. Yeah, very. Look through the Sundance winners. These are going to be strong contenders, but also don't forget the blockbusters. Deadpool and Wolverine is expected to be the biggest box office draw of the year, and that's going to show up somewhere in the awards almost certainly.
Right.
We've got Wicked Part 1, which I'm super excited about. I'm a huge Gregory Maguire, the books fan. So I loved the books. And then they were turned into a musical that I love. And I just know I'm going to love this movie. And also on the maybe musical, it is kind of musical side, we have the Joker sequel, Folie à Deux. And with Lady Gaga. And I did not think we needed another Joker movie until somebody said Lady Gaga in musical. And now I'm like, okay, I'm in.
I gotcha.
And of course, there's Furiosa, Gladiator 2, and Kevin Costner is coming out with some crazy long new series called Horizon: An American Saga, and he's releasing both parts 1 and 2 this year.
Oh,
so that's going to be interesting to watch. I don't know what to make of it, but definitely keeping an eye on it. And then, there's some just buzzy features that are released at the traditional time at the end of the year to watch out for. The Supremes at Earl's All You Can Eat, Conclave, which is about the choosing of a new pope, and Megalopolis is the new Francis Ford Coppola movie. So these are all ones. Or just, if you loved a certain movie or certain actor or actress or director from this year, look up what they're doing next. Like the next Lanthimos, Stone, and all collaboration, including Willem Dafoe will be back too. It's called Kinds of Kindness, coming out this year. If you love Lily Gladstone, look up Fancy Dance. Okay. That's going to be her next vehicle. Sing Sing might get Coleman Domingo his next acting nomination.
All right. Very good.
horror fans, we don't usually get many movies nominated, but Robert Eggers, best known for movies like The Witch and The Northman and stuff. You watched The Witch, right?
Yeah.
You did, yeah. His next movie is Nosferatu, so everything about this spells success to me.
Very good.
And animation fans, you've already got Orion in the Dark out on Netflix, which is literally Charlie Kaufman for kids.
Okay.
And there's going to be a Lord of the Rings animated, like
War of the Rohirrim,
prequel. Yeah. And then, of course, Disney's got some stuff coming out. Let's see how they do. We've got Inside Out 2. We've got Moana 2. We've got Mufasa.
Okay.
So a lot of stuff, a lot of contenders already.
All right. Well, I'm sure glad we have you here to keep us oriented and aware of some of the things. On your Letterboxd, is that like a segmented list, or that's all your movies?
That's all my movies. I have a explainer at the top.
Got it.
It's ranked. The movies that I've seen, I'm ranking them. So by the end of the year, by the end of award season, it'll be all the movies with my personal ranking. But then after that, you'll see the next group is stuff that's coming out in the near future. There's a lot of horror movies on there, not because I think they're going to get nominated, but just because I like horror. So
sure. Maybe we should think about some for the show tracker for our subscribers. We have the show tracker resource. That might be something we can see if we can. I've got movies in there, but maybe we should buff that up a little bit or separate it out in some way. Anyway, it's a database. We can do stuff with it. Cool. Well, let's wrap it up there, Elysia. Thank you again so much for the fun. I know so many people enjoyed this, and we wouldn't have had it without your standing up and saying, but what about film? Or not even what about film, like, let's do film. Let's go.
Oscars, yeah.
Exactly. So thank you again. Thanks for everyone who tuned in for all of this coverage. Let's quickly thank our Patreon subscribers in just a moment. Just a reminder that if you are interested in supporting the community, that we do have a couple of ways that you can subscribe. You can use the Supercast. There is a link in the show notes, as well as the traditional Patreon Supercast. I think we get a little bit better upside on it. And it's a better platform for us in the long run in terms of serving podcasts, because that's what we do. And again, you can do month to month, or you can do annual subscriptions if you want to go that way. We offer a nice little discount for that. And again, all of these, all your support goes into making sure our co-hosts are taken care of, that our software licenses are paid for, and that we can, keep the lights on here. So we also have our Discord. So if you're a Discord user, we've got a fun and active community there. We've got a great mod team. We're always sort of innovating and trying some new things. But like we said on the podcast tonight, we had a lot of fun live chatting when we were all watching the Oscars. We have some affiliates. We have some other podcasts that we like to sponsor. Elysia, you have a podcast feed of your own, and maybe a couple more before the year is out. We'll see what else you got. Anything that you want to share with us at this stage, or are you still scheming? Not scheming, that's not the right word. Are you still cooking in the kitchen?
Just, Star Wars fans, stay tuned, and we'll shift dust. Beacon 23, wrapping up season 1, prepping season 2 coming up, and the Dune series. Which, we're going to go into prep you for analyze everything that's out so far, prep you for the third movie, and also prep you for the HBO series coming out this summer about the Bene Gesserit.
Have we heard anything about that? It's still been vague in terms of a release date. Do we have a date?
People seem to think that it'll be midsummer, but nothing that anyone's announcing yet. So we'll see.
Okay. We'll see.
We'll probably find out probably get a date like 2 months before, maybe.
Right. We've also got Properly Howard Movie Review. Anthony and Steve have a concept for their new season of old movies that they're going to review. They have told us what it is, but I'm not going to say anything until they're ready. But I was instantly, I loved the title and I love the concept. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll update you more when we know that they will be back. We will also be doing Severance coverage with Steve and Anthony. As soon as we have dates for that, we'll let everyone know. But we're going to do a 4-way podcast on that. So it's going to be a joint project between us and between the Lorehounds and Properly Howard. I'll just tease this. We have Fallout coverage coming. Speaking of community, Aaron K. and a friend of his are going to get together a Fallout podcast to cover that exclusively. So that's exciting. That's kind of the quiet, soft launch, even though everybody's talking about it on the Discord. So it's not that much of a secret. And then, of course, we have our newest podcast, which we're so happy to be a part of and looking forward to it as it continues. Rings and Rituals, with our favorite Tolkien scholar, Marilyn Arpakila, and her colleague, Dr. Sarah Brown of Signum University. They are looking at all 8 episodes of the season 1 of Rings of Power, and they're analyzing and breaking down all of the rituals that we see on screen. And then they're taking that look at that, looking at the Tolkien Legendarium, looking at real world comparisons, and then again, bringing it back to our own lives and examining how ritual plays a part in our day-to-day lives, even though we're not part of the Rings of Power Legendarium. So that is on a separate feed. So if you want those podcasts, you got to go and subscribe to her feed. And that's for all of these. So if you go to the show notes of this podcast, you will see links to all of those down below, or you can go to thelorehounds.com and we have all of them published there as well. So make sure, because you're not going to get them on the Patreon. That's one of the reasons that we're doing Supercast. It's going to let us do some different things with that. But if you want those, go to the website or go to the links in the show notes below. For the Lorehounds ourselves, we're covering Shogun right now. We're going to have a Dune podcast, as I mentioned. We just did a one-shot on Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Masters of the Air, we're going to do a recap coverage as that season is coming to an end. As I mentioned, Fallout, we're going to have that coverage. And then this summer, it's going to get kind of messy because we've got the Acolyte, we have the Boys, we have the Bear, and House of the Dragon, right? So we got to figure out how we're going to do all those coverages. And thank goodness that we have co-hosts and friends that we can podcast with, and we'll figure out our strategies. Because I know you're very interested in the Acolyte, I believe.
Well, yes, that's going to be part of the Star Wars announcement. So
okay, so stay tuned. We've got a lot going on. Shout outs to our supporters, to the folks who boost our Discord server: Opus the Machine, Gnarls, Aaron K., Tiller the Thriller, and Dork the Ninjas. Thank you all so very much. To our lore masters, who are our top tier subscribers, we really appreciate you, and we love to give you guys shouts at the ends of all of our podcasts. So, Samartian, Mark H., Michael G., Michelle E., David W., Brian P., Nick W., SC, Peter OH, and I apologize, I'm running through these because my voice is I'm losing the voice as we go. Bettina W., Adam S., Nancy M., Doof71, Brian 8063, Frederick H., Sarah L., Gareth C., Eric F., Matthew M., Sarah M., DJ Miwa, Andra B., Kwang Yu, Deadeye Jedi Bob, Nathan T., Alex V., Aaron T., Sub-Zero, Aaron K., Dally V21, Gnarls, and always last but never least, Adrienne. Thank you all so very much for your ongoing support. It means a lot to us. Thank you to everyone who subscribes. Thank you to all of our listeners. Wherever you are, we're happy that you're with us. So thank you for giving us your ears and your time. Elysia, thanks again for doing this. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone else.
The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities. Thanks for listening.